Hi everybody and welcome to another special edition of B2BNAV. Still holed up in our various properties as a result of the COVID-19 continued disruption. So you've got myself, Matt, you've got John, who appears to be in this morning studio this week, and Ollie, who appears to be actually in the office, but you can assure me you're not in the office, are you, Ollie?
I am not.
Good. So we thought we'd touch on this week maybe some of the, I say, positive disruption, if I can call it that, in relation to the coronavirus kind of outbreak and how it's impacted businesses potentially in a positive way, and we can come on to that to discuss it, because obviously the negative and adverse impacts across businesses and individuals has been significant. So, but we are seeing across several of our clients certain themes that are probably worth touching on. John, do you want to go first in terms of first one to kick us off? What are you seeing in terms of any positive outcomes of this so far?
I think it all came out of just thinking about SWOT analysis, and you know, when you always look at a SWOT analysis and you look at the weaknesses and you look at the threats, and then you always think, well, what are the opportunities and what are the strengths this delivers? Mm-hmm. And I think the key one, I think across BDB for me, has been the interaction between teams, between individuals, between departments, and the making of an effort to actually engage with your teams and not be too busy too, because there's so many things you need to kind of be cognizant of people's welfare. You know, are they okay on their own? You know, a lot of the younger team are on their own. You know, they've left home. We're their first, maybe second job, and they're actually living on their own. Yeah, and they're now sat alone.
Yeah, I think. Are you finding that you're speaking almost more to people than you do when you're in the office? Ironically.
Yeah. Immeasurably more. Yeah. And I think it's more valuable conversation as well. I've noticed when we talk with focus, we talk with an objective in mind, whereas in the office it's very, very easy to get sidetracked and start talking nonsense with someone or go off topic. Or Ollie's smiling because that's probably our MO more days than not.
The conversations are generally now it's a lot more punchy, aren't they?
Yeah, it's like I've joked about us kind of trying to do Japanese stand-up meetings, and you know, you talk a lot about why book an hour when 15 minutes will do the job.
Yeah.
And I think people are more conscious of it. I think they're much more respectful of everyone's time and everyone's situation, which is really nice. And I think it's helping everyone get along more. And I wouldn't be surprised if as a team, we're all a lot closer and we all understand each other's roles a lot more.
Yeah.
When we get through the other end of this.
Definitely. And I think also in terms of I think I've probably said it before, but the use of the Teams or Zoom or whatever platform is kind of irrelevant that people are using, forces you to be more punctual, which is a strange observation, but just for me personally, where you have got virtually back-to-back meetings, naturally in the office, one spills into another and it knocks on your day and you're constantly running late, which I don't know, it's a strange, must be a point in the human brain, I guess, that's, you know, that feels more acceptable to be late for a meeting in person with your team as opposed to leaving somebody sat on a call waiting for you, which is strange, but it's just a weird observation I've found. Have you found that, Ollie? Or?
Yeah, I've definitely found that, which is, like you say, it's really weird. Somebody's physically sat in a meeting room waiting for you, but you don't care as much as when you know that time slot's there in a diary, on another call waiting for you. And I think we already talked about this possibly in a previous episode as well. I think it's a bit easier to exit a conversation because you're not chatting, you're not as off topic. So it's that more like, it's 11 o'clock, our time's up and I have another call, so I'm going to have to.
I found myself using the phrase, I've got a hard stop at the beginning of meetings a lot more than I've ever done in the past. Like, you're right. It's kind of weird, isn't it? How you're much more kind of automated when you're in a digital workflow than you are when you kind of
it's just a really strange observation, because human nature, it should be worse to leave somebody waiting in person, but but it's not. It's certainly not for me. And as I say, yeah, I'm conscious of going back. I've got another call. I've done it with clients this week, which is really unusual. But when you've got to dive off one call onto another, I've just said, sorry guys, I've got to shoot. I've got to jump onto another call, and everybody's quite accepting of that as well. I think, which is interesting as well in terms of the empathy people have got towards working in this way. I guess the other thing.
I hope
go on. Sorry, John.
I was just going to say, I hope that's something that, transcends COVID-19 and kind of, we don't all just revert to type when we all get back in the office and start seeing each other face to face again. Yeah,
no, 100%. And in terms of Ollie, I guess one of the things we are seeing across our client base, particularly at the minute, is I guess I'll call it, and you can rename it whatever you want, but accelerated digitalization. So, I think the digital transformation has been on the agenda for many of our clients for a number of years now, in terms of development of the tech stack alongside their digital presence and profile and so on. But it seems to obviously be forcing the hand of people who maybe were either slow with that or maybe a bit more reluctant to embrace it. What's your thoughts on that?
It's just reversed the priorities, really, hasn't it? In terms of, we'll always have things on our lists and things like that we need to get to. We know they're important, but we've got a million other things on, and you're firefighting a lot of the time. And I think that applies to everybody, really. Whereas obviously this situation, when we all have to communicate digitally, we all have to do everything digitally, we have to do business digitally, has just meant that any digitization has now jumped up massively in terms of what's a priority or not. So as a very small example, we were using Skype internally, and we knew Skype wasn't the tool for us. We had better tools available to us. So Microsoft Teams is the successor to Skype. We hadn't switched over to it yet. We hadn't told the team how to install it, how to get it, even though we had it. So we were all still using Skype. Pretty much day one of being forced to work from home and having call issues with Skype, pretty much everybody switched to Teams. And it's no longer, let's do it at some point. It's literally, today we're using this, let's go. And I think obviously it's not as simple to digitize in every area as that change has been, but I think we're seeing clients start to shift the mentality and think like all these things that we used to do, how do we continue to do them now in this period where we're all remote? So whether that's calling, whether that's meeting, whether that's generating leads, having sales meetings, sharing collateral, those are all considerations that previously were, let's pop it in the mail, let's hand out a physical brochure, or I'll tell you when I meet you, to now we have to do it digitally.
Yeah. And do you think there's a slight reluctance or anticipation there from clients because we don't know what the world does look like post this era, if you can call it that, for the meantime? So in the sense of, I'm thinking specifically around the events and exhibition space here, obviously, which we've referenced on several of the previous podcasts, but some of the events that were, and exhibitions that were deferred a quarter are now subsequently being cancelled. And it's forcing clients to think, well, what do they do across this leaner period now where there's a big gap in their kind of events and exhibitions agenda? Things like virtual visitor that we're launching, kind of our BDB solutions to that, and more to come on that in due course. But there's almost a reluctance as well to commit spend to that because people actually don't know the full, the full developments yet. So are things permanently cancelled? What's going to happen instead? And there's a kind of a nervousness to spend budget that was allocated to something else in this intervening period. Have you seen that at all, John? Or?
I don't know. I think if anything, certainly the clients that I'm working with most closely at the moment I haven't seen any sort of downturn. I've seen a sort of a pivot or a lateral movement in where the money's been spent.
Yeah.
I've also seen a lot of them either quiz me or other members of the team around the word digitization. I think it's become more than a word now. And Ollie, you'll know this more keenly than anyone, I guess, is within clients, large clients, and even smaller clients, you hear the word digitization, you hear we need to move to a digital world without any real, I guess, understanding of what that means, what the implications are, what's needed to make it happen. And yet now people are becoming really, really focused on what is digitization, what can it do for my business, and where's it going to take me? So I think if anything, it's making people more conscious that they need to do something, because if they don't, there's going to be, like the crash in 2008, there was like this big gap of like 6 to 8 months where nothing happened. And everyone had to catch up again. And I don't think anyone wants to be in that spot when normal reappears.
Yeah, because I found myself writing something the other day. I can't remember if for the team or for a client, but I said something along the when normality resumes or something like that. But I guess the reality is that probably will never be the case. I think even if we go back to where we were, it's going to be some kind of hybrid
different where we were.
Yeah, like a hybrid world of there'll still be some, like going back to the events, still some physical events held, obviously, because under no stretch of the imagination do I think events and exhibitions have been killed off by this. They won't be. But there could be a reluctance to travel. There could be a reluctance to host global events on such a large scale. So I think people are going to pivot and think differently. Yeah, go on, Ali.
Yeah. I was talking about the same thing the other day, and if you think about it, let's say the UK decides that we can all go back to work again in 3 months. Is that the same for the US? Is that the same for the rest of Europe? Because if not, then the shows are still going to continue to be affected. Travel is still going to be affected. Even after we're officially allowed out, you've got to imagine that there's going to be some kind of reticence to some extent. So even when exhibitions are going ahead again, I'd expect attendance to be down to some extent from that point of view of people going like, well, do I really need to travel? So it'll be interesting to see how that, that continued digitization kind of is still in force, when things are normal.
It's these once in a millennia events, isn't it, that kind of really change behaviours and stuff. And while it's probably an over-dramatic analogy, you think about the meteorite and the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. It was that extinction event that gave mammals the chance to thrive. Yeah. And while this isn't by any stretch as catastrophic as that, how can it not change the way that people do business or want to do business? Like you say, Ali, if in 6 months' time things start to kind of filter back into a more normal, or sorry, not normal, how it used to be. Yeah. Say people aren't going to say, well, actually, we've done 6 to 12 months of marketing without any physical interaction with anyone. Why do we need to do physical interaction? Why do we need to spend money on print? Why do we need to spend money on this when we can actually create those experiences in a digital environment and we can handle everything that way? So
it's definitely going to force people in that direction, isn't it? Without a doubt. I think it'll be interesting. I think as much as the environment, it's how it impacts the individuals as well, in terms of changing the mindset and philosophy of maybe more traditional business people. Choosing my words carefully there, but in the sense of the more mature C-suite individuals who I've heard it from, this is the way we do things, who are more reluctant to change and embrace the digital kind of environment and world. I would hope this, if nothing else, has shown them that, this is kind of almost your business continuity plan. And certainly from a marketing, brand awareness and lead gen perspective, without it, you are going to struggle. Because if it is taken away from you, as it has been, your ability to kind of interact on that physical one-to-one basis, you've got to have this in your artillery. And the more robust a strategy and a more evolved strategy you've got around it, the more chance you've got of success, I guess.
I think I've lost count of the amount of times I've heard clients say, we use an event to have a meeting, to seal a deal, to negotiate. And you're like, well, you can't do that. If that's your only route to kind of closing deals, you're in trouble right now, and you're in trouble till when? September, October?
Well,
January.
I've referenced him a couple of times, and we're hopeful to get him on a podcast to hear about his experience. But Mike Golden from E3, who's one of our partners over in Shanghai, has just been on 2-week lockdown house arrest. That's what he's termed it. I don't know if that's the actual term. Where he's been locked in his home. He's allowed. There's a government camera placed on his front door. He's allowed to open the door once a day to take the trash out and take something in. I can't remember what it was, something like a delivery or something, or whatever it may be, or the pharmacy supplies or something. And if it opened outside of that, you'd be arrested. So I'm in full lockdown comparative to what we're on here, and we're complaining that we can't go for a 2-hour run. But he's just been released from the 2-week in Shanghai, the 2-week kind of house arrest, as he called it. and just, you know, he's chatting to you this morning. So he's out and about now. He's been out for lunch for the first time since January in Shanghai. And he said, whilst people are still wearing masks and still keeping a respectful distance, is the way he phrased it, it feels a bit more like a return to normality there, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about the journey that they've been on since, I think it was December, was it, when it broke in Wuhan out, and then
I think about the beginning of December,
obviously.
wasn't it?
So that's almost what, 4 months ago, getting on for 4 months ago now.
Yeah.
And so I think
like half a year ahead.
I think UK and Europe, we've got to wait a long time to go yet. And that's what I'm trying to speak to our clients about, when they're maybe a bit more reluctant to embrace digitalization, in the sense of, well, what's the other option? Do nothing for the next 6 months? Because that's how it feels to me, that they're kind of waiting, and people are sitting and waiting at the minute to see what the new normal looks like. And I think if you do that at the minute, you're going to lose such an opportunity on maybe a competition, or lose ground, might be the different way to look at it, for the people that are actually doing things differently.
Yeah. All that advantage that you could have had will just become the normal day to day, won't it? It'll just become the norm.
And I think it's just it's requiring people to be a little bit braver and a little bit more gung ho. You know, a bit, as I always say, a bit more lion and a bit less sheep. So stop waiting to see what everybody else is doing and do something different and embrace it. And somebody's got to be first over the trench, so to speak, to actually do this. And in the world of B2B, you don't get that many brave marketeers, do you? Because typically they're a bit more timid and want to do what they've done previously that works and doesn't upset anybody. So that's a kind of weird paradigm at the minute of wanting to do things differently and embrace it, but then a nervousness about using budget and trying something new, where there's obviously, you know,
new's scary, isn't it? New is always frightening.
I think new's also scary when there's, you know, the impact it is having on jobs and employment, and, you know, in the UK, the whole furlough arrangements and potential redundancies and so on. You know, and I say I've said it previously, we're fortunate at BDB, I think, because our client base is widespread in terms of the sectors that we cover. So the more health, life sciences, pharma and nutri industries are growing and seeing this as an opportunity to showcase their products and services, which is great for us. You know, if we had a portfolio that was solely in manufacturing, I'm sure we'd be slightly more pessimistic.
It'd be a different world, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I think
we're also fortunate.
Go on, John. Yeah, sorry.
I think we're also fortunate in that our clients are forward thinking. You know, many of them, and again, without it becoming some sort of like infomercial for what we're doing with Virtual Visitor, anyone who we've kind of spoken to about it has been incredibly receptive to the concept, and has almost made that step already of going, well, actually, I know that whatever the new normal is, it isn't going to be normal, and it's going to be a weird hybrid of something I used to know and something I've got no idea about. So I need a contingency. I need a strategy to be able to meet people, to manage my press relations, to do whatever it is, you know, launch products, blah, 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 you know, anything that you would normally do in your marketing world.
Yeah.
And I think we are as a business, are very fortunate that the people who we work with kind of have already made that step to some degree of, I know I've got this budget here, but I know I've got to do something to kind of maintain the kind of wheels of sales.
And I guess I'm going to jump into something slightly random here, but another thing that's coming out definitely, and not necessarily even marketing related, so I'm going to take it slightly off piece here, is the mental health aspects of working at home in isolation. So, you know, we touched on earlier, I think one of the positives to come out of it is the cultural impact on the business. Whilst it's certainly challenging and difficult, I think it kind of is bringing people even closer together, and there's certainly a lot more empathy being shown in our team for people's respective arrangements. So, and that ranges from international employees we've got who have relocated to Manchester, as John said, living by themselves, through to members of our team at the minute who are primary carers, not only for their parents, who are in the vulnerable older generations, to having kids, and some people have got all that to contend with, along with trying to hold down a job and maintain that kind of seamless level of service to our clients. So I feel that people are being more empathetic towards one another, and even the working hours, the working arrangements, when people are available, unavailable, people seem to be quite respectful of and mindful of. I think another thing that's brought to the forefront for me is how difficult people are finding it. I don't know about you guys in terms of hearing it echo around the team. And I would say more at the younger generations, but not limited to them, if that's a fair observation. What do you guys think, Ollie?
I was surprised. I didn't think I kind of didn't think it would bother me at all. But it has done. And I found myself at times just getting, I guess, a little bit anxious when I've had emails like that come in. And I think it's just down to the fact that there's that extra barrier in place in terms of communication, in terms of getting stuff done. So everything feels more of a challenge almost. And I guess it's probably calmed down a bit now, but like the first week or two of it, I just found it so weird to have these extra barriers in place. Maybe we're more used to it now, and more used to just picking up the phone when we need that help or need somebody's opinion on something, as opposed to feeling like you've got to go at it alone. Obviously, if you're in the office, you'd just go and chat to somebody, or somebody would request something. But when you've got those extra barriers in place, I just think everything does become a little bit harder.
Yeah. What do you think, John, on that one? Because I mean, I'll say across the team, it's something that I've been monitoring, and to the extent that we're gonna do some training around it and have some experts in come and speak to us to try and help people through this period. But what do you think?
I think it's certainly, and I can only really speak for myself, but I've seen it in other people. I think it's made people kind of consider their own situation, their own kind of working practices, their own position and what they're doing, and how they want to kind of fit in and help the machine, and where they fit as well, and what the value is. And that's kind of quite quite introspective. But I think everyone's had that moment where they've sat down and gone, okay, well, where do I fit? What's my role? What am I here to do? How can I make the most of this awful kind of predicament we find ourselves in? And I think across the board, you can see a change in people in terms of how they approach things, where they're kind of looking to take things. And I think that's really positive. And I would hope that, once we get back to the new normal, that continues.
And do you think, it might be a controversial on this one, but I'll say it anyway, in the sense of, do you think, the Queen's speech the other day, when she said something along the lines of she hopes that this generation can be remembered as being almost like as formidable as the generations that came before, and they're not the exact words, but that's certainly the sentiment of what she said. Do you think they are? Do you think they are as resilient? So when we talk about resilience, and because it felt to me almost like when we started the lockdown and finished from work, and I'm probably the biggest champion of Gen Z and the younger generations in work, and try to push them to the forefront and support them. But on day 3 and 4 of working from home, people were already struggling. And, I'd be lying if I didn't say, Christ, we could have like 6 months of this. I was thinking in the back of my mind, and I thought, how are we going to get through this if on day 3 and 4 people are already making noises that they're finding it challenging? And that's no disrespect to those individuals that were. That's fine. I was just surprised, I suppose. I was like, I can imagine this sort of 3 weeks in, that people finding it tough. But so early on in the journey, I was like, oh Christ, I thought, well, we're going to have to do something a bit different.
I suppose, and again, it's not kicking anyone. It's just
no.
I think Gen Z are a product of their era, aren't they? And that sounds really kind of patronising. It isn't meant to be. It's just kind of a case of, you've got social media, you've got connection, you've got all these kind of things that we didn't experience back in the, whether it be the 90s or the 80s. It was a different world. It was pre-internet. I suppose it is quite, in some ways, it's quite paradoxical, isn't it? Because they're the most connected generation. So really, it should be business as usual.
I suppose that might be that's probably my, that was my assumption, and maybe that's where my assumption went wrong. What were you going to chip in there, Ollie? Sorry.
The other angle of that here, I suppose, is that obviously the subject of mental health has become a much wider and more embraced subject. Let's say in the last 10 years or so. So what we might just be experiencing is people that are just more open about what they're going through, and more comfortable
discussing it.
I mean, it's always been, they said, you always read things, it's always been a thing, hasn't it? You know, and it's just whether it was a brush it under the carpet, and, you know, the old school mentality was just deal with it, be professional, be a man, be a woman about it, and don't burden anyone with your problems. But actually, I think that's one thing that that's one thing where I think Gen Z are very good, is they're quite happy to kind of be open about stuff.
Yeah. No.
And I think
as I say, it's a learning for me, and I always think as a business leader, you're always learning, and you should never make assumptions. It's one of those things where I think it's just again brought it to the forefront for me of another aspect of this that you can't take for granted. In fact, by no stretch were we at BDB, but I think it's probably accelerated me again doing something to make sure we are supporting individuals that are struggling with it, just like you would with any other aspect of working life that people find challenging or whatever. So arming them with the tools and techniques to kind of help them through it.
I think that empathy thing is really interesting, because I've chatted to a lot of people about it, and I think the one thing that I have taken out of this more than anything is it's made the world a much smaller place. Yeah. You know, I've got, whether it's cousins in the States, family in New Zealand, you know, we've got Mike Golden, who we know in Shanghai. Everyone is going through exactly the same thing, whether they're further in the journey, they've got the journey to come. Yeah. And the whole world is actually is going through exactly the same thing. And it's the first time that, as the Queen said, you know, and since the Second World War, it's the first time the whole world has had a common instance and a commonality to draw it together. And I think that's quite interesting. And it does I think that does start that journey of empathy and kind of think, well, everyone's going through this, so how do we kind of help them manage it, make it easier, make it better? Yeah, no, very relevant. I was going to say, I think I've spoke more to my family across the world than I have ever on a normal week-to-week basis. And my only thing I'd do differently, I think, in this situation was probably buy shares in Zoom before it kicked off. That would have been a nice little gain. And the house party. That would have been the other one.
Yeah. No, it's interesting seeing all the tech platforms that are taking off, TikTok and so on, everybody's going crazy for. So, okay. I think that's it from me, unless you guys have got anything else to add. But no, interesting to chat. Nice to catch up with you guys. Feel free, if you are listening, to check out our latest edition of The Knowledge, which has just been released this week, and www.b2bknowledge.com. For all content, free, ungated content, helping you navigate the ever-evolving B2B marketing landscape. And this month's edition is all around ideation. John, have you got any more to add to that, given this was kind of your baby to
I mean, it's a subject very close to my heart, but I think what I would say about the content of this month's knowledge is it's a really interesting read in terms of making people, hopefully changing people's perceptions that everyone can have a creative idea. It's possible, you know, and it's okay to have bad ideas, and, you know, don't let anyone ever tell you there's no such thing as a bad idea. There are, but they can always lead to a better idea. So use them as a catalyst for a springboard. But yeah, it's kind of got a lot of quite interesting science behind it, which I think will help people understand the process and hopefully get involved in the process more themselves. Yeah, absolutely. So if you've got some free time on your hands and the sun's out, sit in the garden and enjoy it. I think it's one of our best and most thought-provoking editions to date. So thanks very much, everybody. God knows when we'll be back in the office together doing this, but we'll try to keep the content flowing for you. And thanks for listening. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Okay, cool. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.